of like our paradigms, right? Which are like deeply constructed into our brain, and
Mhm.
then kind of like reconstruct our whole subconscious. You mean like kind of like rewiring the brain? Is
I
that
would
like
say
how?
I would say it's more of a cheat code. I think that the reconstructing of the brain is a little bit more of a macro scale idea.
Okay, okay,
So that would be changing how we actually react to fear and how we
uh huh,
react to things that we're afraid of and that we're scared of and that make us anxious. But so we can change the way that we react to those things over time, and because
mm-hmm.
it's a reflex, even telling the truth is a reflex.
Yeah,
Doing the quote unquote right thing, it's a reflex, and we can change that reflex. But I believe that the first step to that is changing your behavior in a moment. So it's one moment where you have the opportunity to lie about something, or to
yeah,
avoid failure, or to avoid anxiety and being scared of something, and you dive into that
mm-hmm.
thing and you say, tell the truth, or um, post that thing that you've been hesitant to post because you're scared of how people will perceive you, or
Yeah,
saying something to your peers that you don't feel that they'll receive, that they will be receptive to. It's
mm-hmm.
those things that will in turn restructure your brain. But I think that
Okay,
those practices that I've been talking about with breath work, I believe that those are ways that we can access the ability to actually change those little micro, um, what would that be, like a micro action. So you
mm-hmm.
can change those micro actions, and then over time that'll change the physiology of your brain. Um, Something that I find interesting is that as you go down that path, your dreams
Yeah.
will change.
How do you catch these things? Like, let's say when you were talking about that, like um, the moment, like let's say you were about to tell a lie but you
Mhm.
decided not to. So how do you like catch these things? Like how do you become self-aware or um, self-aware of these things, that hey, like okay, this is the thing which has been happening, and then how do you come out of that? Like when do you know is the time to stop? Is
Mhm.
this something like that, like you take the step once, then automatically the next time you find that you're doing it, or like how does that work?
No, far from it. It takes a long, long time, and and stress can actually revert back. I referred to that earlier. How stress can actually revert back those changes that you've made.
Uh-huh.
Because so one example is that it's really, really hard to quit smoking, um,
True.
especially cigarettes, because it over time it becomes, you've associated your cigarette with feeling good and dopamine,
Mm-hmm.
and that gives you an instant hit of something, good. That's your something good neural circuitry. Dopamine is that neurochemical that makes you feel good when you do something good, or also something bad,
Mm-hmm.
potentially smoking, potentially eating chocolate. And we've actually, not we, but people have found that it's the lead up to that thing that releases more dopamine than the thing itself. But with smoking, you can quit smoking and you can be okay, 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 okay. And then you hit a time of stress. And then that increase in stress reverts you back to your old way of thinking, where the only way that you can get dopamine is a cigarette. And that's why people have such difficulty quitting smoking, is that
Uh-huh.
once you're reverted back to stress,
Yeah.
the means in which you have addressed that stress before come back a lot stronger. So it's not just a one-time change that changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be, it's a practice. Even those things, telling the truth and doing the right thing, all of that is a practice. In a way that I think that is, for me, the best way to start that process is through a more psychoanalytical perspective. So
Uh-huh.
I think Jung does a really good job at addressing those changes that people make. And he has the concept of the shadow, which is this part of yourself that you kind of put to the side, that you don't really like to look at, that isn't good. So we talked about it a little bit earlier, even how I don't believe that people are intrinsically altruistic all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In that Hobbes Rousseau dynamic. I think people are more in the middle, but I think we can go to either side. And with that, you really have to look at yourself and say, what am I capable of? What am I doing right now that I don't like? And you can sit down in a meditation, in anything. You can sit down on your kitchen table with nothing on, close your eyes and ask yourself, what do I have to do? What do I want in life? What am I doing right now that I don't
Yeah.
like? And if you pose questions to yourself in a to the point way, you'll get answers. You might not like them, but you'll get them.
But you get them, yeah.
Yeah, and with those answers, I think I think that's the first place. That's the first step to
Have to, yeah.
becoming better at being the person that you want in life. To realizing that Jungian self is to acknowledge the shadow and to incorporate them together. So you need to know the things that you're not good at, and you need to be honest with yourself about the things that you're not
Yep.
good at or the things you want to
Yep.
change. And so I think that awareness is the first step to that.
So it's like kind of like reflecting, and then like kind of like, in a way, like I think you got to like start. You said it beautifully. You got to start like being more honest with yourself. And do you think like you got to like start being more strict towards yourself? Because the normal human tendency is that, okay, the moment you start doing hard things, your brain tells you to go back to the normal, like old things, right, where the things are easier. So do you think like you got to like start telling yourself to be more disciplined? And then in like normal situations, let's say, for example, a person is in a habit of lying constantly, right? And then one day, back of the mind, they know what they're doing wrong. They go back home, they do self-reflection, they, let's say, take out a notebook, start writing about it, and then kind of like self-reflect. But like, what happens, or what's the way where like, you can stop this from happening at that very moment, so that you don't go in regret when you're back home opening your diary again and writing, hey, I could have avoided this if I would have done this. So is there a like easier way where like, it's like spontaneous, where like, okay, this is what I was about to do, but I will not do this. So is there like a easier way, or is it something which, like you mentioned, you got to develop with time?
Yeah, no, it's hard. It's like really, really hard. I
It's hard,
think,
yeah.
yeah, I think one piece of that is really being empathetic with yourself and understanding
With
that,
yourself, okay.
yeah, this isn't going to be, I do this one time. This isn't a one-time fix all thing. I think it's really, really hard to develop a more complete personality and a personality that you would consider to be ideal. I think it
Okay.
takes a lot of time. I think it takes a lot of relapse. I one thing for me personally has been like the lying example is something that I try to never lie ever, no matter what.
Yeah.
Even if someone asks me a really tough question, I would way rather just
Be
give them
honest.
the answer
Yeah.
than create a fabrication, which is hard a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes you fall back. So someone asks you something and you tell a lie, and that's a part of it. That's a part of that hero's journey. There are dips all over the place. It's not
Yeah.
linear. There's not consistent upward growth. That's not something that's sustainable.
Yeah.
We
True.
have to be up
Yeah.
and down a little bit,
Up and down.
and ideally the general line like we go like that. But in that, we're still doing this a bunch.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think people really beat themselves up about things. Maybe stuff like overeating. Like if you have an eating disorder and you're doing really, really well, and then you have a day where you totally break, the most important thing to do is say, this is a moment. This isn't forever. This is something that's happened here, and I can go back and I can change, and then maybe the next time, maybe the period that you start your diet or your new health fad or something like that, there's a 100-day period where you don't have a relapse, and then you have that relapse. And instead of diverting back and saying, okay, well, that's life now, I'm a failure, I can't do it, I think it's important to be empathetic with ourselves and say, okay, I tried, now I'm going to get back up and I'm going to do it again. And then hopefully the next time that you do it, it lasts for maybe 101 days. And then
Yeah.
the next time, maybe 102 days, maybe 103.
Mhm.
And then over time, it gets better and better and better and better.